Hey, toy fans! ToyGuru Neitlich here, back as your host on the Spectre Creative channel, where we look at the toy industry and try to answer questions and observations that a lot of adult collectors have, because I am an adult collector, but I'm also an industry professional. I've worked in the toy industry for about 25 years, and those two things combined have given me a very unique perspective that I like to share with you, and that's why this channel exists. So today we're going to talk about caps. And I'm not talking about caps like these kind of caps. I'm talking about product caps, which are called MOQ. And the reason is because this is why it is very difficult sometimes to produce adult collector product. I made a previous video about reissues, and I briefly touched on this, but I get a lot of questions still, so I want to make a dedicated video about it. All right, so very briefly, what is MOQ? It is minimum order quantity, which means that is the minimum number of units a factory requires from an order to go into production. And let's just say, for the sake of this video, that's 10,000 units. So whatever you order, you have to order 10,000 units worth in order for that vendor to accept your PO, to go into production. And vendors that make action figures, that make little plastic men and women with or without articulation, etc., what the kind of the bread and butter of what we all collect. Well, these are not action figure vendors; these are plastic vendors, and they also make things like plastic cups and baby bottles and all sorts of things made of plastic. And a lot of times, an order for a plastic cup could be 100,000 units or even 1,000,000 units. So when someone comes and says, I want 10,000, adult action figures of Batman or He-Man or something, the vendor's going to be like, I'd rather make plastic cups because I can make a lot more and there's less assembly. So how do you understand MOQ? And really, this is about knowing it all. This is about really being a good marketing brand manager, which is the role that I had for many years. And it's all about understanding the customer and not just the customer, but their emotional needs and why they're buying product. Whether it's a parent, a child, a gift giver, or an adult collector, we all have an emotional attachment to our purchases. It's why we're making a purchase. And whether it's relieving stress or feeling an accomplishment, whatever the reason, knowing your customer base and why they're buying the product is the key. All right, so let's say you're making an adult collector action figure, right? Like this Wolverine figure that Marvel made. I'm using an example that I didn't work on deliberately. And again, let's say that 10,000 is the minimum order quantity that you can make. Well, let's say you have your 10,000 units, but there's actually 13,000 fans that want to buy this product. So you've made an order for 10,000, there's 13,000 people who want to buy it, so of course, doing grade school math, there's 3,000 people that want it that can't get it. So what do these 3,000 people do? Well, they do what all adult collectors do. They go on internet forums and on social media, and they start screaming as loud as they can, we want a second run, we want more, why don't you make more of this, in this case, Wolverine action figure? There weren't enough. The problem is, you have to think of it like a Venn diagram. So you have your MOQ of 10,000. Each circle represents that. And then that middle section where they converge is the number of fans that still want a product. So it's sort of like the fans that are satisfied in A versus the fans that still need one, which is A and B. You're still stuck with the same MOQ. So if you went back into production and ordered a second run of a figure, or anything, you still have to order the MOQ, the minimum order quantity from the vendor. And that's 10,000 units in this hypothetical case that we're using just to have a nice round number to understand that. So if you go into a second run and order an additional 10,000, to appease those 3,000 people screaming online, not screaming, but asking politely, shall we say, online, Well, that's going to lead exactly to this, and you're going to wind up with too many units because you only have an audience of 3,000 now, but you have 10,000 products. And that means that this product is going to now be on the clearance aisle or, taking up space in a warehouse. And that's actually the worst thing because that costs money, it hits the bottom line, it's a problem. Companies don't want this. They don't want their product winding up on clearance. So, this was something we encountered. I've said in other videos about the PKE meter. We produced it, it sold out, people started saying we want more. We did a second run at the MOQ, but it turned out only a small portion of the MOQ now remained. Most of the customers, say 80 to 90%, were covered by the first run. So doing that second run to appease the 10, 20% that didn't get one, well, we were now stuck with the MOQ of the product. And when that happens, nobody wins. But how do you win? How do you avoid doing this? And that's kind of the trick. And it's kind of the difference between a good brand manager of a toy line and a great brand manager of a toy line. And as I said, it's all about understanding the customer and understanding their emotional needs. And I will say this is what a lot of brand managers, not just in toys, but in all of marketing, kind of overlook. They just say, oh, okay, there's about this many people out there, we're going to put out these figures. Here's the trick. You don't have to order the minimum order quantity. You could order more than that. So if you know there's 13,000 fans that want this, instead of ordering the 10,000 units, why not order the 13,000? Is that just, the magical solution? And now there's exactly enough for exactly the amount of fans. I mean, the problem is this is a gamble. It's very hard to know exactly how many fans, and it's a much better bet to order fewer than to order more. And, I know this is not the answer you want to hear because in all of our minds as collectors, there's nothing more important than getting our figures. So, it's like, why can't you make exactly how many? But can you see how difficult this is? And the reason it's safer to order fewer is because if you order fewer, yeah, sure, you're going to have some fans upset. But from a toy company's point of view, especially a large Fortune 500 toy company, having, say, 3,000 fans upset because they can't get a figure is a better scenario than having a warehouse full of product because that costs money, it takes up space, and what do they do with it? And if they clear it out, it's going to damage the collector line because it's going to devalue it. So you could see why it's kind of a no-win situation. And of course, a lot of people say, well, why don't you just pre-order and make exactly how many figures that, based on customers you have? Why can't you just do this? Well, some companies do this. We had a lot of success doing this on Matty Collector with the subscription model. It's exactly why we did the subscription model, so we could make exactly enough collector product for the audience without guessing. Other companies do custom order, build to order, things like, what HasLab does on their Pulse website for big items like the sail barge. They do make that to order, or, Super 7 did that with Snake Mountain. But doing this with everyday single figures is just so not cost effective, and that's the problem. So what's the key? It's, again, that emotional connection. It's understanding the customers. And I will plug my company here, SpectraCreative.com, because that's what we do. We help companies understand their consumer base from an emotional standpoint in order to maximize money, sell more product, and make everyone happy. All right, I hope this video helped clarify how MOQs affect avoiding the clearance aisle. And if you've got questions or comments, leave them below. A subscription or a like would be appreciated because that tells YouTube to share this with other people. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you at the next video.